vigilance, the action or state of keeping careful watch, standing guard, defending the bulwark between the righteous and the godless. The millennial generation has lost its way. They're screwed up, messed up. They don't know who they are as Americans. I'd like to give you an example of what I'm talking about. But first, I'm not really talking about all of the millennial generation, but I am talking about the generation in general. Now, the example I'd like to share to illustrate this is there is a professor at Brigham Young University, the Idaho campus, and he recently released something interesting that's happening in his government class. At the beginning of every semester, he has all of the new students take a survey, and then he plots the score of the entire class on a graph, and he presents that to the class. Every time, without fail, those young people have identified and aligned themselves more closely with the Communist Manifesto than they do with the Constitution of the United States. Now, that's an amazing thing to learn because, by and large, the kids that attend Brigham Young University are LDS kids, are Mormons. They grew up in religious, conservative, principled homes. And yet, these young people are more communist than they are American. And no one is more shocked than them. He says that when he shows them the results, they're shocked to realize that they are, in fact, a bunch of commies. It never dawned on them that they were. You know what? I don't think it's their fault. My 5 children are of that generation. I didn't teach them the principles of liberty. I didn't teach them about the Constitution. And why? Because I didn't know. You see, I didn't get engaged or involved until after they were grown. And I regret that very much. But you know, maybe it's not just my fault. I think about growing up. I was patriotic. I had great feelings of love for my country in my heart, but what I didn't have was anything in my head that would support what I felt in my heart. I was emotionally patriotic and intellectually ignorant. It's a shame. So was it my generation's fault or the one before that or the one before that? I don't know, but there is this apathy that has crept in. And it's real, and it is destroying our country. And we can't say that we weren't warned. James Madison, author of the Declaration of Independence, or not James Madison, Thomas Jefferson, author of the Declaration of Independence, an amazing man. He had this to say: if a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be. We cannot be free and ignorant at the same time. Now, James Garfield, President of the United States in 1877, gave us a warning about the Congress that we have today. He said, "Now, more than ever, the people are responsible for the character of their Congress. If that body be ignorant, reckless, and corrupt, it is because the people tolerate ignorance, recklessness, and corruption. If it be intelligent, brave, and pure, it is because the people demand these high qualities to represent them in the national legislature." You know, we love to sit around and complain about our government. What could be more fun? But we really can't, can we? If they are corrupt, it is because we first became corrupt. If they are lazy, it's because we became lazy. If it's because they're foolish and reckless, it's because we chose that course for them. Very frustrating. Now, because of these things, I am going to change, starting today and continuing on forever, what this program, Vigilance, is about. Every episode will include a segment on a specific constitutional principle. Every segment will teach us the basics that we need to understand if we are to do our duties as Americans and maybe, just maybe, reclaim our country. Freedom is not free, but I can help. I offer a set of fundraisers that include advanced firearms training, defensive law seminars, Constitution workshops with a focus on the local solution. Now, why the local solution? It's simple. Government of, for, and by the people must always be close to the people. Hey, give me a call, 208-317-9843. Let's talk freedom. So, what I would like to do now is take a few minutes and share with you some experiences that I had just this past week with a couple of millennials. Now, I want you to know that these young people are intelligent and good, and I have known them and loved them for many years. They are not evil or dark or twisted, but they are exactly what Thomas Jefferson talked about when he talked about ignorance. So, let's dive in. I wrote something fairly pointed about President Obama. You see, this guy is in such absolute and total denial. He does not want to know the truth. He doesn't want to hear from his advisors. He simply wants to push his agenda. And so Lebanon was bombed, and 40 people died at the hands of ISIS. An airliner, a Russian airliner, fell from the sky, and 250 people died at the hands of ISIS. And shortly after that, President Obama, in an interview, said, ISIS is contained. Bombings in Lebanon? Airliners falling from the sky? Does that sound like containment to you? The crazy thing is, 9 hours after Obama made that statement, ISIS attacked Paris, France. Another 150 died and some 300 people injured. So I made this statement, and I was challenged by a young man. Well, I replied and gave him some more facts. He accepted those facts. But then he justified himself by saying, well, I'm just kind of a live and let live hippie. Hippie. You know, I am of the hippie generation. I know what that generation is. I was part of that nonsense for a while. I got swept up in it. The hippie generation led us away from morality, led us away from principle, led us away from personal responsibility, led us away from God. And it led us toward communism, socialism, Stalinism. Virtually everything that is good and American, they hated, and everything that is anti-American, they loved and promoted. This is what hippies are. And so, please, do not defend your position by suggesting that you are a hippie, because I know what hippies are, and I will enlighten you. The sad thing about the hippie movement is that it's not dead yet. There are some people that never grew up, never abandoned the evil principles that the hippies endorsed. They never let go of that stupidity. Now, you'll have an opportunity, if you want, to vote for them soon. Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. These two endorse, embrace, and are doing everything they can to bring to fruition what the hippies wanted all those years ago. A few days after the terrorist attacks in France, my wife and I had the privilege of having our 3 grandchildren over to spend the day. As we sat down to eat our lunch, I offered a prayer over that food, and I prayed for the people of France. My grandchildren said, Grandpa, what's going on in France? What did we miss? So I informed them as best I could. My young granddaughter, Tierney, she started to cry a little bit. Bless her sweetheart. And a little bit later in the day, their parents came to pick them up, and they stayed on for dinner. And so when we had our evening meal, Tyranny offered a prayer for us. And she remembered the people of France. I am so grateful for her sweet, young, tender heart. Well, I shared this story on Facebook. And then I went on to mention something that, quite frankly, got me more resistance than I thought it would. I was surprised. You see, I have noticed that people, Americans all over the place, are superimposing the French flag over their profile pictures on Facebook. I suggested that to fly the French flag in any form or fashion is inappropriate because we are Americans and France is a socialist country. You see, if we are true Americans, we must oppose many things that France supports. So anyway, I made this suggestion and I got some pushback. One from a young lady. She suggested that I had put the rules and the laws of man over the laws of Jesus Christ. That I was un-Christ-like. She pointed out all of my sins for me, and I was frustrated about that, disappointed about that. You see, it troubles me that I can pray for those people, that I can teach my grandchildren about those people so that they in turn pray for those people. And I am labeled un-Christ-like. That seems rather odd to me, but that was the case. This young lady was joined by another who echoed her words. And I was un-Christ-like simply because I will not fly a socialist flag. Now, I understand that people who put that flag over their faces were just meaning to show support for the French people. But the fact of the matter is, in doing so, you violated an oath that you made. Did you know that you made an oath to the Constitution? I know that if you were in the military or held political office or other things, that you did swear an oath to the Constitution. You probably remember that. But most people who haven't been in those positions will say, I don't think I did. I don't believe I've ever sworn an oath to the Constitution. Yes, you did. You did. And if you don't recognize it, more is the pity. Let me help you remember. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. The republic for which it stands. What in the world is that? Well, the republic was formed when delegates from the 13 colonies met and created the Constitution of the United States, when it was passed by the Congress of the United States, and when it was ratified by the various states. That formed our republic. And so here's the thing. When you pledge allegiance to the flag, it's not just to the flag. It is to that republic. And because that republic is founded on and based upon the Constitution of the United States, you pledge allegiance to that Constitution. And because, as we will learn here in just a few minutes, the Constitution of the United States was based on the very Word of God, you pledge allegiance to God. So, my question would be, is it possible, is it even remotely possible to fly the flag of a socialist nation while simultaneously keeping your oath to the Constitution? You see, we tend to not consider that to be a big thing because it's just a little profile picture. But here's the thing to consider. If they took Old Glory down from the White House or the Capitol building and put in its place the French flag, if they did the same thing at our state houses, at our courthouses, or even our front lawns. People would object, and rightly so, and I would be willing to bet that you would object. Is it any less just because the flag you fly is small? Does that make any difference at all? Or is the flag still the same flag? I will not, I cannot, and I never will fly a socialist flag. And if I fly a flag in addition to the United States flag, it will always be positioned below Old Glory. Old Glory gets the top spot always. So, anyway, here we see just a couple of examples of millennials who don't really understand. And it's too bad, because they are embracing and endorsing things that are not American, and they don't know it. And I'm hoping that through this, perhaps they will learn it. Well, now I would like to turn to those constitutional principles that I promised you. Did you know that the preamble of the Bible, the book of Genesis, did you know that the preamble of the Bible and the preamble of the Constitution say exactly the same thing? I bet you didn't know that, did you? Well, it does. They do. And I'm going to share that with you. Let's start with Genesis. Genesis chapter 1 says that God created man in his own image and likeness. Male and female created he them. And then it goes on to say that he gave them dominion over the fishes in the sea, over the things that creep on the earth, over all things that are on the earth and in the earth. Now, all things, that includes everything that is in, on, above the earth. These things are things that God gave to man, and he gave us dominion over them. Now, if that includes all things, then it must include governments. Don't you think? So if it does include governments, consider this. He gave us dominion. What kind of dominion did he give us? Do you know? Would God give us dominion and then allow us to use that dominion any way we choose? Of course not. Of course not. He gave us the answer. In the likeness and image of God. We are to exercise the dominion he gave us in his likeness and image. We are to judge and govern and control and do all of those things the same way that God himself would judge and govern and control, with honor and justice, and as much as we can, perfection. Okay, now before I turn to the preamble of the Constitution of the United States, I'd like to share one other thing. Now, this comes from the Book of Mormon. I'm a Mormon, so you're going to get a little bit of that, but I'm not trying to convert you. But I think that this story is worth repeating. There's a story in the Book of Mormon about Jesus Christ visiting the people of America after he was resurrected. And while he was there, he ordained 12 apostles, just like he did in the old world, in Jerusalem. Now, he told those people that they are to be judges and leaders of the people. And then he gave them direction as to how they should lead. He said, "What manner of men ought ye to be?" Then he provided the answer. "Even as I am." Could it be that you are to judge in the likeness and image of God? Isn't that really the same thing? I think it is. Now, this leads us to the question of, what does faith play? What part does faith play in our governments? I'd like to share one thing. In the same year that the Constitution was written and passed by the Congress, that same Congress passed an ordinance called the Northwest Ordinance. Now, this ordinance outlawed slavery in the Northwest Territories. And this is just an interesting side note, but a lot of the people will argue that the Constitution is really a corrupt document because it allowed slavery. And it did. But I will tell you this, that social norms are hard to break and it takes time. And slavery was a social norm at that time. Now you may say, but that is ridiculous. They were actually owning other human beings. Well, let me put it into context for you. Yes, they were. They were owning other human beings. That is a dark and an evil practice, and it was happening. But today we are worse. We don't own human beings. We actually kill our own children. Hitler's Holocaust was 6 million Jews. Ours, the Holocaust of our making, is 50 million babies butchered, not by enemies, but by their own mothers. Think about that. That's our social norm. And how hard has it been to repeal these abortion laws and to make this nonsense illegal? So they were facing that kind of opposition. In fact, when Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, he wrote that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Well, there were those from the South who were opposed to that language. They wanted the language to say that all free men are created equal and endowed with certain unalienable rights. Well, and that's a slippery slope. Who's to identify what free men are? You know, at that time, the black people were not freemen. But what if the war on Christianity continues and suddenly Christians are not freemen? And with a single stroke of a pen labeling Christians to be not freemen, we would lose all of our human rights. What if Islam takes over? What if that occurs? We know that in Islamic countries, women are not free, and they would lose all of their rights. So anyway, thankfully, Thomas Jefferson's original language was there, but in the Constitution, they couldn't get it signed without leaving slavery there. And like I said, people have used this to condemn the Founding Fathers, but let's take a look at what they did. In that year, that very same year, they passed the Northwest Ordinance, which outlawed slavery in the Northwest Territory. They killed it everywhere they could, and then they worked on the rest. But now back to the subject. Article 3 of that ordinance is very interesting, and it talks about the importance of religion in our governments. And it reads as follows: religion, morality, and knowledge, being necessary to good government and the happiness of mankind, schools and the means of education shall forever be encouraged. Schools and other means of education are encouraged to promote, what do they call it? Religion, morality, knowledge. Now, I don't know if there's any significance to the order that these were given, but generally, men like to order things in priority. And I think that they did that exactly here. So what was first? Religion. Religion is to know who you are and to know who your Creator is, to understand that relationship. That was the first priority. Morality. Morality is to understand how we are to act before God, what things will be acceptable before Him and what things will He find unacceptable. And knowledge came last. Isn't that interesting? Because today knowledge is first, and the other two have been pushed clear off the stage. But knowledge came last. And why? Because if people are a religious and moral people, they will use that knowledge to do good. But if they are not religious and moral, they will use that knowledge for evil works. Interesting, don't you think? So I've just given you scripture from Genesis, a little bit of Mormon scripture, both of them talking about the fact that we are to rule in the likeness and image of God. Now let's turn to the Constitution itself. What did it say? We the people, in order to form a more perfect union. I just shared with you the Northwest Ordinance, which makes very clear that the Founding Fathers and the First Congress believed with all their hearts in Jesus Christ and wanted to promote religion and morality in everything. So we the people, in order to form a more perfect union, the Founding Fathers saw perfection in one place and one place only. They saw that in the person of Jesus Christ, and only in the person of Jesus Christ. So that being said, I think that we could easily rewrite the preamble of the Constitution to say, we the people, in order to create a union where it is governed, what did Christ say to in the Americans? Even as I am. We the people, in order to create a more perfect union. We the people, in order to create a more Christ-like union. Do you see how they fit together? A more God-like union. We the people, in order to create a union which is governed in the image and in the likeness of God. I'd like you to think about these things. These are the first principles that will save our nation. It means that we as an American people must return to religion, morality, and knowledge. We cannot be ignorant of these principles. We cannot be lazy in making sure that our Congress upholds these principles. It is our duty and our duty alone to stand. As I said, in coming weeks, I am going to talk about new and different principles of the Constitution. And over time, we'll try to put it all together. But more importantly, over time, we will address solutions. You see, that's the beauty of this. We have a runaway government that is destroying everything it touches nearly. But the power to save our country, to restore principles of liberty, it's in our hands. It's in the Constitution. And we have the pattern set that we can uphold if only we will educate ourselves. Again, I encourage you, come back often. Keep up with us. These episodes come out weekly. And I hope that you'll be with us all the way to the end. I'm Lance Earl. I'll see you soon.